Hello and welcome to the National Library of Israel. And the occasion is the celebration of 400 years to Shakespeare's first folio, which was first published in 1623. I'm Dori Parnes, I'm a translator, mainly for theater and mostly of Shakespeare. And my guest is Yair Sherman, the director, theater director, who has an experience of 2 Shakespeare plays and is about to direct another one in Germany.
Correct.
And we have to thank 2 actors of his company that did that enterprise, Hemmings and Condell. It took almost 2 years to prepare the first folio, and it was the first time that a playwright got the honor of having a folio. Before that, there was an honor reserved for poets. It was the first time that a playwright had a collected edition. And since then, those plays are with us and they accompany us in all levels of life, in the theater, in politics, in everyday talk. There's so many expressions and idioms.
So it's like an anniversary.
It
We're
is.
celebrating.
It is, and it's yes.
Cheers.
And every period, there's one line in the beginning of the folio, because the folio has the plays, the 36 plays out of 38, and in the beginning there are there are several poems that poets dedicated to Shakespeare. One of them is by his friend and rival sometimes, Ben Jonson. And there are 2 expressions in that poem that I think both are right. They're on the face of it, they are contradictory, but they are right. Because at one point he says that he was the soul of the age, which means he was so much of his time. And several lines later he says he was not for an age, but for all time. And like both are true, because he was very much of his age, and the fact is that he is still for all times. And we all try every time to make him, like Jan Kott wrote in his book, our contemporary. Shakespeare, our contemporary. And every period finds a new meaning and a new way of tackling those works. So actually my first question is this: what makes him for you of our time?
Well, I think Shakespeare is timeless. So in this way, it worked back then, it works now. It deals with the same big questions, but I think as society moves forward, then we address these questions maybe in a different way, or maybe we project a light on a new issue, subject. So I guess as we move forward, the text moves forward with us, but at the same time it stays exactly as it was. And I think that's what makes it so important and so good, and a classic, basically.
The best example for that is the editions, the Shakespeare editions that are published all the time. Like there's the Cambridge Shakespeare, the Oxford Shakespeare, the Arden Shakespeare. When they do, like they publish every play with commentary, like a bit of text, and the rest of the page is commentary. And they started it in 1899, and the first Arden, they finished it in the 40s. So we had 38 editions with commentary. Then they started the second Arden, which is like the second edition of Arden, new commentators with new ways of thought because the time changed.
It's endless.
So the texts remain the same, the commentaries are completely different.
And they probably comment on the comments, and it's like a
Yes, it's
ongoing,
like an ongoing
cycle. Yeah, it's
the
like
conversation between.
It's like an argument. Like once you have, once you release to the world a piece of art, then it's not longer yours. It belongs to everyone. It belongs to the public, and it's the same with poetry, literature, theater, film, television.
There are all the
Even
time
paintings.
new focuses, because
Yeah.
now in Arden 3, which they just finished like 2 years ago, and they already started now Arden 4, but it's like for 40 years they're commenting on the same place. In Arden 3, you suddenly have all the subjects of gender and
Yeah.
I mean the focus all the time changes.
Yes, but you can also see it with critics. For example, when they critic a show, then you have this one critic who says, I don't know, one thing about your show, and then the other one would comment not only on your show but also on the critics, and then they would go back to an older version. And I think this dialogue it's quite important, and the deeper the art is, the piece is, then there's more to say about it. And as we evolve, as society evolves, then you really do think of things in a different way. I think one of the best examples when you talk about women's rights, for example, like when you read Shakespeare's plays and you look at the parts that he wrote for women, you notice that it's really not so equal. It's very difficult to find main roles or depth roles that are well written for women as for males. So when you address his plays today, it's really, you cannot really avoid addressing this issue. So not only today, I don't know how many years ago, when was the first production of Hamlet played by an actress, a female actress? When was that? How many years ago?
It was in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah Bernard, all the romantics.
Yeah, yeah.
Before that, even the women, no, not before that, but in Shakespeare's time, that's one of the reasons why the female roles are less equal is because boy players played them.
And also, female
imagine
roles
Lady
in
Macbeth.
society was you know, they were destined to be
So like a
mainly
play,
at home, or
yeah, absolutely, like a play like Taming of the Shrew, which, who knows, but could be taken then.
as a comedy, like,
Yeah, and at its face value. I mean, a woman must be tamed
yeah.
with very severe measures.
Yeah, as if you look
Deprived.
at it from his point of view, you don't see her point of view at all, or you don't really.
But
Yeah,
on the other hand, I mean, that's because he was so talented, I suppose, that you do see her point. I mean, it is possible to stage the play from her
I mean,
point of view.
now you have to. If you don't do it, then you would really be accused of being chauvinist,
But
and
you
for a
see-
good reason, I think.
Sure, but there were like 3 plays called Taming of the Shrew at his time, and his is the only one that can be changed from. I mean, the woman can be shown in it.
Yes.
Because
Because he didn't write it in a flat way, but I
it's
feel
exactly
like
like in The Merchant of Venice. I mean, is it anti-Semitic? Is it pro-Semitic? There's this stock character, the shrew, the Jew, but it's not like the Jew of Malta by Marlowe, which is really anti-Semitic. In Shakespeare, something of his genius penetrated those characters in a way that they can be shown in a human way, the whole as a living person, and it can be, you can identify with them in a way.
I think he left some air. There's a lot of space for interpretation. So, in the hands of whoever decides to work on his plays, it could be translated or interpreted to many different ways, and you could actually make some characters that are not as well written as others, like wholer, and some could be really empty. And it's really like he was an amazing writer, and we can only try to do the best with his.
What you say about the hole, that he left a hole, is something that I always feel. I feel that he always left. I mean, when you compare, he didn't write. Most of the time, he didn't write his own plots. He took plots from other sources, histories or plays that were before him, or stories, Italian novellas, and he adapted them. What he did really was not like writing plays, but writing adaptations for. But the one thing that is always very apparent in the way he told the story is that he left something out from the original story. And that something is usually the very, very clear motive that appeared in the original story. He just took it out and left a hole.
Give an example.
For example, in Othello, it's very clear in the original story what his motive is.
What is it?
He's jealous of Othello for marrying Desdemona, and he wants Desdemona. And he wants to bring Othello's downfall.
I see.
Now, Shakespeare does something sophisticated, because he gives him like 4 different motives. Every time he says to the audience in one of his soliloquies, he says, I do it because of this, I do it because of that, I do it because of that. Like 3 or 4 motives that really cancel each other. And in the end, you don't really know what his motive is. He does it because he does it, because that's him. And he's mysterious in this way. And in the end, when they catch him, he says, don't ask me why I did it, I will say no more. And he shuts up until the end of the play. He remains a riddle. So that he does that.
Yeah, but this what you just said, the riddle, like the mystery, there's a certain void.
Yeah.
There's a gap, and you need to fill it out with something. And I also think that's the key for why his plays are so successful, and why each production is completely different, because each person, each director or actor fills in that gap, the void, with his own imagination, creativity, decisions, choices. And I think that's a very generous way to write something, because you leave room for imagination, and you say, I trust you. You can lead the way. I just gave you like breadcrumbs. Like, you know how to follow the way, but you will take it. You will take it wherever you want to.
Yes, it's like a scenario, and he says what the action is, and then you have to fill it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that is right. That is the reason why every production is not the same as the other one, because there is this hole to fill.
And every performance of
directors, actors, audiences, each one has to fill that hole. It's very very apparent in a play that you did in Hamlet. So many interpretations of this play, and and of this character, and of Ophelia's character, and the relationship between them. There was the romantic Hamlet, the intellectual Hamlet. There's so many ways of, is he mad? Is he not mad? He tells the story, and then you have to fill it. How did you come to Hamlet? How did you approach Hamlet? How did it all start? I'll ask something before that. Hamlet is now performed in Bet Lesin, which is a theater in Tel Aviv, very mainstream, and usually does psychological dramas or comedies or boulevard. And out of the blue, suddenly, the artistic director, Tzvi Pinez, decided to do Hamlet with Yair Sherman, who's like the new modern voice, in a very bold production, giving him all the carte blanche to do everything, with almost no cuts, a 3.5 hours show, a big success it turned out to be. But how did it come out? How did the idea start?
The story is that Tzipi Pines, the artistic director and CEO of Bet Lesin Theater, she sat in the theater. She was watching a run-through of a new show she was producing, and she just looked at the set design and said to herself, I cannot stand this anymore. It looks the same. Every production looks the same. I need a change. I need something new. And she got out of the theater and she called me. And she's like, Sherman, I have an idea. Let's meet. I was like, okay. And then she offered Hamlet. And I tried to be a little bit more difficult. I said, Hamlet, we had 3-4 productions of Hamlet here in Israel, in the big theaters in the past 30 years or so. So I said, let's do something new. There are so many plays of Shakespeare that haven't been on stage in Israel. Let's do Antony and Cleopatra. And I presented her with 2 casting choices for both plays, and I gave it to her 2 days after the proposal. And she just looked at it and she said, Hamlet. I said, okay, Hamlet it is. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
And then when you started to work on it, on this enormous play, how did you start?
Well, Hamlet, it's it feels like an explosion of creativity in the writing, in the play itself. And I felt like I didn't want to restrain myself with a box or something that is too concrete. I felt like it had to be abstract, and one scene could be tragic and the other could be hysterical or farce or absurd. And the more I read into it, I felt like my main connection to the story is the theater, is the group of actors, and the love and respect that Hamlet has to the art of theater and to actors. And it's dark times now all over the world, and in Israel especially, we feel it here. And I felt like it could be a really strong contradiction or contrast to celebrate theater with the most iconic play ever written. And to have this reflection, maybe it's not a reflection, it's like a denial, it's like a decadence of celebration on the one hand, and political corruption, meltdown, shutdown, pandemic on the other. And I treated this show as if it was the last show I would ever direct. And I also wanted the actors to perform it as if it was, or it would be, the last performance of their lives. And this is why I also edited Hamlet's monologue, To Be or Not to Be, from where it was written. That was the only like aggressive editing I did. I took it from its original place and I replaced it in the end of the play as an epilogue. And I
Spoken by the
divided
whole company.
Yes, I divided the lines to the whole company. So To Be or Not to Be was kind of like breaking the fourth wall and talking as actors, not as characters, to the audience about theater and about this moment we shared, or these 3.5 hours we shared together, and it could be our last time. So that was really my idea, and I think it's interesting because a lot of people, especially theater people, not people that just come to watch theater, I'm talking about actors and scholars and that watch it, sometimes if they don't like it, they would usually have a concept or an idea of how you should play Hamlet, and they would talk about the misery and and Hamlet as a character of a tragic prince who is so conflicted in his mind, and I think it's true, they're right, of course, but it's not really what the show is about. And sometimes they have this thing where they say it's not. It's not dark enough, it's not political enough, or it's not. But I think they don't really allow themselves to see the interpretation or what this show is about, not what the play Hamlet is about. Because when you read it, it could be all of these things. But I really decided to go for a celebration instead of like, and when you see it, next to reality, theater next to reality, then you understand the tragedy. That was my point of view.
Because there's a whole world there that is like the opposite of theater
Yeah.
in the show.
Yeah, and it's
The political side and Fortinbras' army like represent the anti-theater.
Yep. Yep.
So when in the end, after this moving moment of To Be or Not to Be, which we share with the actors, like it's all ours to be or not to be.
Yeah, 40, including Claudius, including Gertrude. I mean, all the villains, everyone, they are saying they're to be or not to be. And then Fortinbras
Enters with the drills.
enters from the audience's door, from the back, and turns on the lights of the
work
venue.
lights,
Yeah,
yes.
the work lights. And he basically shuts down the theater.
Because in the new regime, the new world, the new theater
is not needed.
is not needed.
Yep. We are unnecessary. And
It's a strong point.
well, I think we feel it sometimes. I mean, here, I don't know what it was like around the world, but we used to be. I think maybe one of the commandments in our Bible, the theater Bible, was show must go on. That was like the first, right? In our Bible. And when the pandemic started, it really changed it. It shifted everything. No, it doesn't have to go on. We can turn the lights off. And even when we got back to the theater, actors and crew members still, if they were positive, then they would cancel a show or bring someone else with like a
Headphone.
yeah, and the whole way you looked at theater changed, and maybe what we believed in was not true. I mean, show must go on. I mean, if I'm sick, then I don't have to go to work, maybe. Which used to be outrageous. I mean, actors would, literally would break their leg before premiere and still go and perform on stage.
Yes.
So, yeah. It's a new world. Or maybe not.
During the pandemic, you worked for a year with a group of actors in an acting studio on Midsummer Night's Dream.
It was it during the, it was somehow it was like between shutdowns. I don't know, somehow it worked. Yeah, it wasn't like,
No, I remember I went to the first reading, and after that, it was like lots of months that were. Anyway, you did work
no
for almost a
rehearsal.
year.
We rehearsed as planned, but I remember now that every now and then some actors would be
Quarantine. And,
yeah. We had to somehow work between the raindrops.
but that was also an amazing production. It was like, I think the best Midsummer Night's Dream that I've seen.
Wow.
No, it was so lively. It was so crazy. It was so magical. It was so funny, and dark. And there's something that you do in Midsummer Night's Dream, in Hamlet too, when you really insist on every nuance of the text, and still it feels so of this moment. I have a friend whose son was raised in the States. A young boy came here a week ago, went to see Hamlet. He said he understood everything. He was engaged in it. He was absorbed in it, and he could understand everything.
4 years ago, I directed Requiem by Hanoch Levin, adapted, on the 3 short stories of Chekhov in China, with Chinese actors. It's not like it's not like a language you would say, okay, I can catch. It's just so different. Like, it does not sound like anything we can even try to understand, especially not in like 2 months process. And I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to direct it? I remember I did auditions, and the whole panel of investors and producers was sitting next to me. And I thought to myself, okay, this is real. I mean, actors are coming to audition. Investors are watching me work for the first time. I have to at least appear as if I know what I'm doing. And that's when I realized, even though I knew it, but I actually realized that theater has no language. I mean, of course, it's based on language, but it's not that it has no language. It's especially, I think, the director's work. You work with actions, you work with emotions, and emotions are the same in every language, and also actions. And when I was trying to direct the Chinese actors, I had a translator. So I would say something, I would look at the Chinese actor. The translator stood next to me. The Chinese actor would look at me, would not understand a word of what I was saying. And then he would translate me, so he would move to the translator. I would not understand what he was saying. I just hope it would be whatever I was saying. Yeah. And then he would perform it with my instructions. And I could really see whether my instructions were accurate or not. And And sometimes maybe it was lost in translation, but it really made me practice on how to give directions in a way that an actor could understand and apply. And it's never like intonation. It's never like no, say this word, like no, it's what is your intention, what are you aiming for, what is your action. And I think once you clarify this, then anyone can watch a theater show, even if it's not in your native tongue, even if you don't understand the words.
Listen, when I came to see Midsummer Night's Dream in the studio, in the acting studio, there were sitting next to me two girls. I don't know how they came. They were just two girls. They looked at the program before it began. They said, "What? Like 3 hours? No chance we're staying after the intermission. No chance." Now it started after 10 or 15 minutes. I started hearing them giggling and then laughing and then really enjoying it. And I was all the time waiting to see what would happen after the intermission. They were there. And in the end, they were like standing up, shouting, screaming. So with this material and with those girls, it clicked.
Yeah.
And it looked like fun, like entertainment. And it was written for people. It was not written for scholars. That's one of the things about...
That is so true. And I think, in Israel, we don't really have a tradition for theater. It's a new country. And I think sometimes like classical pieces, Shakespeare, it has a reputation of being high culture, sophisticated, not common. I mean, not contemporary. And it's not true. I mean, you just have to see how you adapt it to nowadays. But he really did write to the people. And you can see sometimes like, it's not only we talked about storyline. It's not only storyline. Sometimes he stops the storyline and he adds a character and it's like a stand-up comedy show.
Yes, absolutely. And he has all sorts of like in-jokes about the company and about theater and with the audience, about things that they saw. Even in Hamlet, he's got this little thing when Hamlet says to Polonius, before the show starts, the show that the actors prepare, Hamlet says to Polonius, "You said that you used to act in the university." And
yeah. But there's even another example, because that I could not translate really to Hebrew in a sense that the audience would understand it, because it's about the actors in the company of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I left it because I think it's cute, but no one understands the joke between us.
No, of course.
However,
but that's a key to the way.
Yeah. So sometimes when he was writing, a contemporary joke for his times, like talking about politics or company or whatever, that you understood that the people of his time got it. So I often allow myself the freedom to change the text or to add something to make it contemporary. And in Hamlet, for example, when Rosencrantz and Guildenstern meet him, and they talk about the group of actors that are coming, and there is a joke there that Shakespeare wrote about the Globe, something about there's a group of young actors, and he's using the word globe in a sense that the audience understands we're talking about the Globe Theater, but it was also the Globe. And I changed it. You remember they're saying Betlessing Theater. And again, a lot of people, theater people, actors, directors, and so forth, they tell me, "I don't like that you use that word." And I'm like, well, you know what? I did it by choice, and I stand behind, because I think this was his intention. Otherwise, you need to edit it out.
Yeah.
Because it's not a joke anymore. It's just text. Meaningless. Information.
Yeah. And about when you said before about women, Ophelia here gets a very substantial part, and she's not what we are used to see as Ophelia. What can you say about her?
I think Ophelia is an enigmatic character. I think she's fascinating. And she's also like an iconic character. Like a lot of actresses desire to play Ophelia because of the icon she is, but not because of, like, once you read the text, not too many scenes, not a lot to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she is fascinating because there are so many questions about their relationship and about this household, the family, and her place in the palace, and the way she dies. And it's really interesting to investigate it and to make those choices. And I think the biggest choice I made with Ophelia is that she's kind of like she's also playing a role. Like she's wearing a mask in front of her father. She's not naive. She's not innocent. She will lie to save herself first. She's having a relationship with Hamlet, a sexual relationship. She's hiding it from her father, and she gets like caught up in this mess, and she doesn't know how to get out of it, and it's just getting worse and worse. And then she gets also she feels guilty because Hamlet is to blame, and she doesn't know she doesn't know how to get out of everything, and everything gets back to her, and she's so deeply like tangled within herself.
And they also use her. I mean,
and they use her, and she knows they're using her, but she doesn't want to expose herself, and she doesn't want to like blame Hamlet after what she already did. So the only way she has, or the only way out, is to get mad, to get crazy, to lose it, and to kill herself. But I think in this production, it's really like she leads her way. She leads her way also into this mess. It's not in others people's hands. And she's not so pure
no.
as she's normally presented. She's not pure. She has guts. And she's also manipulative. No one suspects her because she seems innocent, or they want her to be innocent. Yeah.
You said before that you don't enforce intonations. You talk about actions with actors, not the inflection of the voice, and not how to. Still, it is very, very extraordinary that in your productions, I'm very sensitive to it as a translator. Many times when I hear my translations on stage, I want to bury myself, I want to kill the translator, and I want to blow up the theater. And
What
I say,
a nightmare.
who is this translator? How is it? It sounds terrible. And in both cases, in Midsummer Night's Dream and here, they speak not only clearly, they speak as it should be spoken. They speak, they really know what they're saying. They're saying it very naturally, without losing the poetry. Even the verse, the meter, all that you can hear it, and it sounds wonderful to the ear. So how do you do it? Because most of the directors don't achieve that clarity of speech. What do you say to them? How do you work on the text?
First of all, I think when I direct Shakespeare, especially here in Israel, like when language is not really like the expertise of actors.
Absolutely.
I only choose actors that I know of their text abilities, voice and speech abilities. I would not take that risk. They could be extremely talented in contemporary plays or television, but when they have to play Shakespeare, you need to know how to talk it. You need to know how to address it. That's A. B, I think from like the first day on, I always say it's about the text. Know your lines. Every single word, every single sound, syllable, vowel, and commit to it. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how much fun you have on stage if you can't communicate it and deliver it to the audience, especially with this beautiful like poetry, with beautiful text. I mean, if we don't have respect for it, if we think we are above it, then we're going to piss off the audience, really. It's just going to be like, if you're sitting at the audience and you're like, what? Then they give up. I think that's really, we're obliged to reach out to the audience, especially because of this example you said about the two teenage girls who came to watch it. You know, I have a friend who came to Hamlet a few weeks ago, and he doesn't really like theater so much. He always feels like he can't follow. It's like he has ADD or something. And he was very concerned about 3.5 hour play of Shakespeare. And he came out and said, listen, I understood everything. And he talked about the text. I really understood it. I could follow it, everything. And I think when it's so well written, I mean, you know, I could do whatever I want, like with the actors and the set design and the costumes. If the text doesn't go out clearly, then my work is shit, really. So it's really the base of everything, and the rest is fun and creative, but I cannot put myself before Shakespeare. I mean, I have to serve it, even if I want to change it.
So exactly about this, I have this quotation here from Peter Brook when he says about serving Shakespeare. He says, if you talk about serving Shakespeare, the only service there is to serve the reality that Shakespeare serves. So your service is to bring to life, to our unreal life, elements of reality. And you do it through the best channel there is, through the best writer there ever was. So Shakespeare is really a channel of bringing reality to our unreal world.
Yeah.
That's the idea, which is, I think, beautiful and very of the essence of theater.
Absolutely, and you can see that in a Hamlet. I mean, they put on a theater show, which is fiction, but it brings reality. That's the moment where the Claudius is exposed, where he's facing reality through art.
Through art.
Through the art of theater here, but it's always through art when we actually face reality, which is, it's a mystery, but that's what art is all about, I think.
So we'll end with a mystery. There was a conference, a Shakespeare conference in Washington, like 30 or 40 years ago, and Jorge Luis Borges, the writer, was invited to speak about Shakespeare, and he came on stage, old man, blind, two assistants helped him to the stage, put him there instead of the mic, ahead of the mic, and he started talking, but the mic was not the right height. It was higher than him, and nobody dared to disturb him or. So you couldn't hear anything from what Walker says, but you, every time when he moved his head, you heard like he said, Shakespeare, Shakespeare, and Shakespeare, Shakespeare, and the lecture was called The Riddle of Shakespeare. That was the name of the lecture,
Wow.
and it remained.
He did it on purpose.
Maybe
He didn't know what to say, but it became.
you heard it like a sound from a faraway ship, just sound. Shakespeare, 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 and that's the riddle of Shakespeare. So I think maybe he solved it.
Yeah.
that is what is that. Everything one has to say about Shakespeare, but we said a bit more.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Doi.